So our main female character finally gets a name. It only took about 9 to 10 episodes to get a full name. So we have our main female character's name is Knowing Happiness, or Chi for short. So Chi, or Knowing Happiness. Really unique name. I like that. I like how the name, the Japanese meaning, like the direct translation of her name means knowing happiness. It has a lot of correlations when it comes to the theme of this episode, like human beings, if they can't hear, like usually they express, their thoughts or feelings through words, and if you can't hear, there's other ways to communicate with others to let you know how they feel, for instance, with drawings, or a smile, or facial expressions, and that plays a huge role in this episode with how the grandma was talking about, human beings are really interesting. No matter where they are, where they're born, what language they speak, they will always show a sad face when they are sad, and they will always smile when they are happy. And it makes a lot of sense when you find that out, and when you find out the main female character's name is Knowing Happiness, like the direct translation, you're like, oh shit. It's just the meaning behind the name and all that, for when you start thinking about it. So, in this episode of Death Parade, this episode kind of sets up for the final confrontation of our characters and the judging of Chi. For instance, Chi in this episode, we find out some shocking revelations behind humans that stay in Queen Decim, or, the other plane, like this other plane of existence, for too long. If you're a human being and you go there to be judged by an arbiter, and if you stay for too long, you'll be turned into a dummy. And this right here, when I saw this, instantly when I saw that, I thought about my theory I made a long time ago, on episode 2 to be exact. I remember on my episode 2 review of Death Parade, I even made a separate thoughts discussion, a theory discussion video. I remember I made a theory discussion on mannequins and dummies and stuff like that. It's playing out exactly like I thought it would. You remember, I don't know if you've all watched it, some of you might not have watched it, but on episode 2, or episode 3, is one of those, I made a discussion video specifically for Death Parade, talking about how humans most likely could be dummies, and there's probably deep meaning behind how the soul can be transferred to another body, because they have to be born again when they're reincarnated. And to see how, if a human stays in this plane of existence for way too long, they turn into a dummy, that right there, very strange. Very, very strange. And it plays at what I mentioned once before. And it explains a lot. Maybe majority of human beings that come here, or come to, this plane of existence where they get judged by arbiters, maybe all the bodies are kind of dummies already. Because their souls have to be housed in something, and so they probably send dummies down there into the earth and all that, and put the soul inside of it to house it. And to see that, I'm like, yo, just to see that aspect of how this was done, it just confirms a lot of my theories I had. But let's get into the real theme of this episode. So besides the obvious of what I mentioned with the mannequins and stuff like that, our main female character, Chi, is starting to turn into a dummy. And regardless of my theories or anything like that, this is not a good thing at all, because there's two ways this can possibly go, and I want to theory craft real quick. If Chi is turning into a dummy because she has stayed too long in this, realm, this plane of existence before she either goes to the void or, gets reincarnated, it means that, is it possible that all the arbiters and everybody that's in this plane of existence that's already dummies to begin with, are they one time ago, were they human? Like, were they humans that didn't get judged? Or were they humans that stayed way too long in this plane of existence? Because it just makes a lot of sense if you think about it. I mean, what if all the dummies, like Decim, for instance, what if he was at one time a human? I mean, it explains the emotions. I mean, emotions could be implanted, because we've already seen it demonstrated with, the crystal type things and compressed memories. But what if Decim at one point, he was a human, and he stayed way too long, and then he turned into a dummy? Like, we don't know necessarily what happens to Chi if she stays too long. I mean, we know she gets turned into a dummy, fine. But what really happens to her? Does her soul die? Does she stay as a dummy? Is it not possible for her to go back down to reincarnation? Like, is it not possible? I mean, we don't know the specifics. This episode doesn't really let us know that. It doesn't really try to explain that aspect, so hopefully Death Parade will clear this up in the next couple episodes, because we only have a couple episodes left. But the way it's building up, it makes me feel like there's a lot more to this series, because there's just so many things that needs to be explained And there's another core concept slowly building up into the series that I mentioned a couple of times offhandedly with my reviews. Like how humanity, they're dying at a faster and faster rate. More and more people are dying by the day, and it's making it harder and harder for the Arbiters and everybody else to keep up with production. And this is causing a huge issue. It's been one of the slight, subtle side plots in the background that, hasn't had much attention, but it is building up. And I wonder if Death Parade will possibly get a Season 2, because there's a lot of ground to cover when it comes to this series, because the main point of Season 1 at the moment is showcasing a new way to judge humanity. That's the main, I guess, plot of Death Parade Season 1, if we ever do have a Season 2. The main point of it is Decim to learn how to judge humans, and maybe testing out if he had human emotions himself, or an Arbiter having emotions, and trying out this new form of judging. And at the exact same token, he's having to judge the main female character, Chi, either to the void or being reincarnated. And to see this, that's one of the main plot lines of the series. But like I said, the main plot building in the background is like something going along with humans dying way too fast. And another thing that was also done in this episode, and it's also another plot thread that's kind of been building up by the episode slightly, but it has been building up. And I'm just wondering, is this a possibility for a Season 2? Because Oculus in this episode, which has been very shady since the first time he's introduced, like, I pegged that dude as shady as soon as I fucking saw him, because his eyes look like a demon. I've said he looks like Satan, or a devil or something, or a demon, and we can assume that. We could possibly assume something like that might exist. And so, if Oculus is evil, which is probably possible, because in this episode, very shady for what he did to that, the elevator man. He put, like, this flower thing, like, his beard and head turned it, like, to a flower, and it, like, grabbed the elevator man's head, and it absorbed all his memories out of his head, and all of a sudden, the dude didn't remember what even happened. It's like he didn't even realize what happened. And so, to see that done, like, it makes me wonder, is this dude a good guy? Is he evil? I mean, the way he smiles and the way his persona has been, he seems to be very shady, and you can also get that out of the surroundings of where he is at in this tower, because let's think about this for a second. In Death Parade, it has been mentioned quite a few times that depending on your floor status, like where you're on in the tower, it might depend on what level of, judgments you get, like murder judgment, stuff like that. And the way the dude's, Oculus's place is, it's very shabby, it looks like shit, pretty much, and it looks like it's a worn-down skyscraper interior. And it makes me assume this dude might be very low down on the status board. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to bet he's, like, very low down into the tower. So I wonder, I just wonder if they're trying to build up this plot thread as maybe a possibility of a Season 2. Who knows? So, yeah. Now, moving past that, and besides my theory crafting, the episode is very straightforward. It's Decim questioning his judgment. And it's very obvious he'd be questioning his own judgment after the events of last episode, because if you really look at the deep meaning of last episode, Decim was the exact same thing, and doing the exact same thing as the detective dude was. Going around, killing people, stirring up darkness, sitting in the backgrounds, watching people getting raped, murdered, whatever, and then judging the person. Decim has been doing that. He's been starting the darkness in souls. He hasn't really been, kind of dragging it out. He's just been creating it. And he's been doing this the entire time since his judgments, and majority of all the Arbiters are doing this. And so Decim finally now understands what is so wrong with their judgments. They're creating darkness, not really helping it. They're not really trying to get to know the person, because any humans can be forced to go dark depending on the situation. Any human could. Depending on the situation of what happens, any person can be forced into something they most likely would never do if, they were their true personality at the time, or their well-framed mind. So yeah, the episode or the development on Decim is really nice. I'm loving the sick-ass development on his character and how he's starting to question himself and the judgments of the entirety of this system. And so I wonder what will happen and where this will lead into as the episodes progress. But the main worry I have at the moment is the possibility of a Season 2. Because, like I said, there is a lot of explanations, or a lot of, back subplots that need to be answered, and it is building up into something important, and could possibly lead into a Season 2. Now, I guess it depends on how popular Death Parade is in Japan. I mean, if Madhouse, you know, they're trying out this anime original series, now I'm guessing if it doesn't sell well or do well, they might not make a season 2. But if it does do well, I'm guessing they're leaving these little, you know, subplots in the background for a possibility of a season 2. I'm guessing that's what Madhouse is doing, because there's just a lot of potential in this series to do a lot of things with. A lot of good things you could do with this series, and it could honestly be kind of endless depending on what route you take with the series. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this episode of Death Parade. It was a very good episode. I enjoyed it from start to finish, and we'll just have to see how this series ends. I mean, we only have a couple episodes left. How do you all feel like, you know, Death Parade will end? Do you feel like it'll be good? How do you feel about my theories with the mannequins and dummies I made a long time ago? How do you feel about, you know, Decim and all that? Let me know in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or not wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.